Jobs are the worst. So I've heard. They're almost as bad as being homeless, but I don't think they're quite that bad. So we, and by we I mean you, have to get one. What I'm going to do is waffle about every major Nintendo franchise and determine which ones you would find the easiest to get employed in. And of course, there's no franchise better to start off with than... So I was fully prepared to just immediately write Mario off because on the surface, the jobs all seem a bit heavy, like being a treasure tracker or a messenger across the galaxy, or Peach's bodyguard, though it seems like there's not many requirements for that job. But when you look below the surface, you realise that casual jobs pretty much exist everywhere. Let's just quickfire a few right now. You could work as a retail worker, a bartender, a builder, a plumber, a pilot, a scientist, a barista, a police officer, a lawyer and a judge. That's not all I could find obviously, but you get the point. There's proof for the existence of many normal jobs. And your options only widen when you go beyond the Mushroom Kingdom. Let's use Pillow Island as an example. This one island from one Mario and Luigi games offers so many options like a tour guide, a drill miner, a shop owner, a gardener, a thief. Again, that's not all I could find, but I don't need to label every single job that you could find in this game to prove that places of employment aren't exactly scarce. Unlike Mario, the jobs in Zelda seem a lot more down to earth as a whole. Let's first talk about the one that's probably the highest in demand, the Knight. And tearing through enemies might sound appealing, which it probably is, but the reality is that's none of us. Most of us are going to be barely surviving out there, but I can still imagine that appealing to some of you because the idea of fighting monsters is pretty sick. I'm just saying realistically, what are you going to do if a silver moblin starts flailing on you? If that doesn't appeal to you, then don't worry. The verse offers much more casual jobs like working in shops or inns, or being a travelling merchant selling whatever you want. Or you could be an estate agent, a builder, an advertiser, a bartender, an auctioneer, an animal trainer, working at a stable, a scientist, or even something as niche as a dyer. You can be a goddamn fashion designer in Tears of the Kingdom, so I think this verse is a very similar case to the Mario verse, but I am going to put it slightly above just because everything is a bit more realistic in Zelda, so I think we'd be able to adapt to everything quicker. Metroid is a verse I have never touched at all, so bear with my lack of first-hand knowledge here. Earth exists and it's the only place where humans can live, but we never go there, so the only choice you would have would be to work for the Galactic Federation, and the stuff they're offering isn't exactly diverse. Or nice. It's also not something they're gonna be handing out to your average Joe, so you're gonna have to be a highly skilled individual for most of these. You can either be part of the military force where you'll be fighting aliens, bounty hunting where you'll be fighting aliens on your own, or doing scientific research on foreign planets. That's it. So to dumb it down, you can either fight/hunt aliens or research foreign planets. And there's not exactly much range in those options either. You're still having to traverse space for both of them, so this is definitely bottom of the barrel for this video. And while we're on the topic of bottom of the barrel, for this video, Star Fox and Metroid are practically the exact same thing. Most of the jobs here will fall under the military sector, like generals, pilots, ground armies and so on, and what you'll be fighting really depends on what side you're working for. If you're a pilot, then literally anything that moves by the looks of it. It doesn't even have to be hostile or particularly dangerous or anything, it could just be a machine minding its own business, water skiing, and then if you're part of the ground team, then aliens, and if you're a general, you just give battle tactics and stuff over the radio. If you don't want to do any of that, then you could work as a scientist that makes deadly weapons for the military, or if you're lucky enough, you might be able to score a job as a shopkeeper, although the demand isn't all there. Yeah, this series is also pretty dead end for jobs, and while not as dire as Metroid's verse, it's still gonna rank pretty pathetically. Animal Crossing villagers are lazy as shit, so I thought this franchise was another one for the chopping block. But somehow, I've still managed to salvage a lot more than I was expecting initially. You could be the mayor, the mayor's assistant, a museum owner, a driver for pretty much any public transport, an auctioneer, a hairstylist, a tailor, an asshole. There are also occasional odd jobs for the other villagers and Tom Nook, although I don't think he actually pays you. Okay, that's a misleading sentence. You do get something out of working for Tom Nook, that being settling your house loan, but either way, I wouldn't consider these actual jobs. They're more like very undemanding errands, but they still have to count for something. So this is another franchise that I really don't think you'll struggle with, and it makes sense with Animal Crossing being a borderline life sim game. So obviously jobs will be common, even if you can't pursue any of them yourself. Pokémon is another humanoid franchise, potentially more so than Zelda, but that isn't to say that the jobs don't get a bit odd for our standards. A large portion of the jobs will obviously be Pokémon related. There's Pokémon trainers for starters, but that isn't really a job or a sustainable one anyway. It's more of a lifestyle or hobby rather than a position of employment. But the thing is about being a Pokémon trainer in this franchise is that the skills you will gain from it could pretty much transfer to any job related to Pokemon in this entire series. You could be a gym leader, a nurse, a ranger, a breeder. I'm just reading a Reddit comment, look for yourself. In fact, I'm sort of getting the idea that most jobs you could do will end up relating to Pokemon in some way, so I hope you like them. That's not to say that every job would be completely ride or die for Pokemon or entirely Pokemon centered, as there are still instances of normal jobs existing as well, like teachers, restaurant workers, shop owners, scientists, receptionists, graveyard keepers, engineers, and just classic businessmen. So I think it's a safe assumption to say that this world would have a lot of job opportunities, considering that it's just the real world, but with one added major lifestyle. In Splatoon, the human race is a thing of the past due to wars having wiped everyone out, but despite our absence, the world still seems to be going strong in the employability department, which I'm sure we can all commend. You may also be happy to hear that most jobs in Splatoon are on the artistic side, so if you are looking for a less flashy, more casual job, then you might be out of luck. Your clear-cut options seem to be either going down the musician route, particularly DJs and singers. They seem to be pretty trendy in this world. You could also be a model for these fashion magazines. You could be one of the idols who are just hosts for news broadcasts really, but you are still going to have to be quite extravagant to fill those boots. You could also work at a store, either selling shoes, hats, clothes, general items, or guns. You could sell food at the Crab and Go or Crust Bucket. And there's also military divisions in Splatoon apparent by the Great Turf Wars, as well as agents who are just given random jobs to save the world. However, I'm almost certain that we as humans would be unable to do any of these. This is because basically the ability for Inklings and Octolings to swim in ink is arguably the most vital part of this game, because it's required in pretty much every mission, seeing as it's the way you travel up walls, refill ammo, and just do other bare necessity things. I watched a video on it, and apparently to beat Splatoon 1 you need to go into squid form at least 111 times, so yeah. So the amount of jobs available is limited, but not awful. I think the real killer here is the range you're given, because everything in this world seems to be hip and trendy, so if you can't match that energy, then I don't think this is the place for you. Okay, so I started by searching up what the home planet of Pikmin is, and apparently it's a planet called Hokate that appears in Pikmin 2's intro. So I went to look at that first, and while we're here, I might as well summarise the plot briefly, just cause I thought it was kinda funny. So it starts with Olimar making his way back from Earth, where he was doing work for the business he works at, Hokate Freights. And when he arrives back, his bum of a boss tells him that the business is in crippling debt, and then immediately sells Olimar's ship to help pay off this debt. He states that it's a company asset and the only one they still owned at that, but I genuinely think he just stole Olimar's ship. Then some other stuff happens that really doesn't matter, except the company ends up finding a way that it can pay off its debts. and that's by collecting bottle caps. This entire intro only gave us one job opportunity, and I'm willing to bet none of you are qualified to fly a spaceship anyway. Okay, here's the thing with Pikmin. There's not a single entity here that closely relates to human beings, which wouldn't be a problem unless the jobs that they do can only be completed by them. And I think that's the case with the Hokatatians in Pikmin. You probably couldn't even live in peace and harmony with these people because they're so microscopic, you'll just end up crushing them all. Call me lazy, but I'm just gonna send Kirby to the chopping block right away with this one. Brief explanation, it's the same situation as Pikmin. All the Twaddle Dees along with Kirby are about 8 inches tall, meaning you probably couldn't live in peace and harmony here. I've got to ask, do you really expect anything from Punch-Out in this video? At its core, it's nothing more than a short but sweet arcade game about boxing. It hasn't evolved at all since the 80s, and it doesn't really need to. But when we link that back to the question at hand, I don't think it takes a genius to realise that this franchise is doomed for job opportunities. Do you want to work in the boxing scene? That's great. You might be the only demographic that could possibly survive here. Fire Emblem is a medieval RPG. We've covered RPGs and we've covered medieval. I have never touched a Fire Emblem game, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I don't need to for this video because I've consumed enough content like it to know what to expect. For the sake of authenticity, I did do a bit of research and found exactly what I was expecting. Shops, blacksmiths, merchants, inns, positions of royalty, armies, personal guards, fortune tellers, doctors, teachers, stable workers. Alright, listen. Smash has left a bad taste in my mouth for these types of games, and it's pretty obvious that this world is well developed already, so can we just put it behind Mario and leave the fantasy anime-esque fighting games that I've never played behind? You already know where this is going. Okay, literally completely unscripted here. The only impressions I have of the Xenoblade games, literally all I know about them is that they are the sussest goddamn games with some of the sussest dialogue and actions and just... I'm sorry if you're watching this on the family TV, but just look at what's on screen. Anyway, I think that's a topic for another video, but as for jobs you could find here, it's another pretty basic roster really. There is a big organisation in Xenoblade X called Blade, which is a military organisation. However, Blade does offer more diverse options than the likes of the Galactic Federation from Metroid. In Blade, you don't have to fight. You could be a pathfinder or a curator who have to explore the world and open up new locations or gather data for Blade. The main difference between these two is that the curator is wandering into unexplored territory, so they are more at risk of being attacked by dangerous monsters or whatever. A reclaimer who goes to collect wreckage from the White Whale, which is a very large and important crash site. A prospector who collects rare resources. An outfitter, which is someone who makes gear for Blade. A mediator who resolves conflict among citizens. Or an interceptor or harrier, which are both more traditional military jobs. The difference between them both being the interceptors have to defend research teams while the harriers go out and actively hunt monsters. That's just one organisation though. Like most games so far, there are still shops, blacksmiths, general stores, inns, hot springs of course, fortune tellers, positions of royalty. Yeah, it's pretty much just the same old here. There isn't much to write home about. Humans aren't exactly placed in the spotlight of the Kid Icarus games, so here's the information I've managed to salvage. Most of the info doesn't even come from the games, they come from the goddamn instruction manuals. In these we see the existence of a nurse, a shopkeeper and a black marketer. And it might be worth mentioning that these aren't even confirmed to be humans, although purely because of the fact that these are professions that can be done by humans anyway. I'll bat an eye just this once. As for the games, humans appear very briefly, so all we see them do is go to war with several armies way out of their league and get thrashed. So we've got 4 jobs here. And to be fair, they are all pretty different from one another, which I can't say about Metroid or Star Fox, but this is still a pretty piss poor performance. So the Mii series isn't officially a thing. Usually people would refer to this as the Wii series, but that segregates games like Tomodachi Life and Miitopia from all the games with the word Wii in the title. And to me that doesn't really make much sense. I think the fact that they all feature Miis as the main characters is enough to bunch them together. Because of the range all these games have, the series does have a lot to offer, and while admittedly some of the games are a bit dead end in terms of jobs, like Wii Play, which is a game where jobs are never really touched upon because it's literally only 9 basic minigames. But then there's games like both of the Wii parties, which have dozens of minigames with very clear-cut jobs in some of them. You could be a cook, an athlete, a horse racer, a lumberjack, a photographer, a game show host, a fisherman, whatever this is, a delivery driver, and an ice skater. We've also got the sports and fitness games in which you could be almost any type of athlete, a personal trainer, or even a pilot. And what about Tomodachi Life, where you could work in retail, be a photographer, work in a restaurant, be a musician, or work in a pawn shop. Then there's Miitopia, where the roles you pick are directly identified as jobs. And some of these are questionable, admittedly, like the flower or thief. But then there's also some of them that are actual jobs, like the knight, the cook, the pop star, the scientist, or the princess. And I haven't even touched on the NPCs in that game, as well as a few other games, but if we were to deep dive into all the jobs this series has to offer, then we would be here for quite a while, which is something I can't say for most of the games on this list. This is the first video I've made where I feel like there could be a few discrepancies here, which I'd be happy to have pointed out in the comments by all means. In the end, the Mii series prevailed overall as our winner, but I don't know whether you should take that as complete fact, which probably means I've failed at the one job I had. However, I think an argument could be made for Pokémon and Mario, and really any other franchise in the top tier being the winner for this video. Yeah, this video was a fucking journey to make just because doing substantial research into entire franchises actually takes really goddamn long. Anyway, thank you for sitting through my ending monologue for those of you that are still even here, and until next time.